Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos.
The main character, after dying in his previous life, he wakes up inside of Harry Potter, inside of Hogwarts, and he is a serpent. What is he gonna do inside of Hogwarts?
Pure-blood families in the wizarding world. If you don't believe me, you can ask anyone. Wit was so calm, showing absolutely no remorse for doing anything wrong, and spoke with such conviction. This made Hermione suddenly lose confidence. She seemed to have been a bit too hasty and misunderstood the other person. Feel sorry. Hermione said dryly that she wasn't used to apologizing to people. If you really feel guilty, then just keep quiet. At this moment, Wit resembled a gentle scholar, with only knowledge in his eyes and nothing else. Hermione felt even more embarrassed. She felt she had done something very, very wrong. She wanted to say a few words of self-reproach, but was worried about disturbing Victor's reading. They could only sit there awkwardly and stiffly. Time ticked by so slowly that even the air seemed thick and viscous, making it very difficult for her to breathe. After a while, Hermione couldn't stand it anymore and was about to get up and leave when Mrs. Pince, the librarian, arrived. "Children, come in." Perhaps because she slept in a little longer today, the usually stern Mrs. Pince spoke in a much gentler tone than usual. Since it was their first time visiting, Mrs. Pince gave them a special explanation of the library rules and how to avoid damaging the books while reading. Page 13. It's clear that she genuinely loves books. Hermione stood next to Vita, unsure whether to leave or stay, feeling extremely uncomfortable. Fortunately, Mrs. Pince did not speak for too long. After explaining the basic rules, the two were allowed to move around freely. Wit borrowed a book and found a well-lit spot to sit down. Hermione hurriedly grabbed a book, registered, and left quickly. Mrs. Pince frowned at Hermione's hurried pace, worried that the book Hermione had borrowed might be damaged. Slytherin students don't have classes on Monday mornings, so most of them sleep in late. The freshmen, especially those who were so excited about starting school yesterday that they couldn't sleep, woke up even later. Draco was no exception. He dawdled until 10 o'clock before finishing his washing up. Then he had to wait for Gore and Crabbe to get up, which took another half hour. What? Wit isn't in the dorm. Draco looked a little unhappy. A good underling should be ready to serve at any time, just like Goyle and Crabbe. However, considering the opponent is very strong, Draco decided to give Wit some face and went to see him in person. More than an hour later, the three of them asked around and finally found Werther reading a book in the library. It was already close to noon. Gryffindor Biography. Draco. You're a Slytherin, reading Gryffindor biographies on the first day of school. You're neglecting your studies. Draco decisively stepped forward and slammed his hand down on the book. What are you doing? Before Wit could speak, Mrs. Pince's stern voice had already reached Draco's ears. Go out. Seeing Draco destroy books as soon as he entered, Mrs. Pince unceremoniously kicked Draco out. Draco was not given any chance to explain at all. No explanation is needed. What she saw with her own eyes, how could it be false? Terribly sorry. Wit carefully straightened the bent book and approached Mrs. Pince, saying sincerely, My friend was a bit rude, and I hope you can forgive him. Mrs. Pince's anger subsided somewhat, and she said coldly, If there is a next time, I will definitely deduct a point from Slytherin. As the librarian at Hogwarts, she has the authority to deduct points. Punish some naughty and unruly children. Leaving the library, Wit walked up to Draco and asked with a hint of helplessness, What's wrong? Spoiled by his parents since childhood, Draco is completely self-centered and is seen by Wit as a walking troublemaker. Wit had no interest in helping Lucius discipline the children. He would put up with it for a few days, and once Snape's matter was resolved, he would kick this troublesome brat to the curb. Let him go and have his love-hate relationship with Harry. Draco, oblivious to Wit's gaze, was delighted by Wit's tact and leaned closer to whisper to him, "We're going to find Harry Potter. My father told me that Harry Potter would be the next Dark Lord, and that he should work with us to maintain the honor of pure blood. I can't let him be corrupted by the Weasley idiots." Chapter 15. Conflict occurs on the first day of school. Going astray. Wit glanced at Draco, wanting to ask, "Are you sober now?" But after thinking about it, Wit decided not to ask. If Draco were lucid, he wouldn't be Draco. He was also hungry, so he decided to go to the cafeteria for a meal. On the way to the Great Hall, a green figure swam into Wit's wizard robes. "Master, the mission is complete." Upon hearing this, Wit opened the game, where a bright blue achievement chest awaited him. "Here you go." Wit happily patted the snake demon's head. While the achievement of hunting magical creatures is not sustainable, it's still fine for acquiring some treasure chests in the early stages. Moreover, the serpent demon killed most of the eight-eyed giant spiders. Wit felt no psychological burden whatsoever at killing this thing. If the serpent demon hadn't been limited in strength, Wit would have even wanted to kill all the eight-eyed giant spiders. At this stage, the snake demon only dares to attack the eight-eyed giant spider, which is about the size of a rat. It doesn't dare to attack any larger eight-eyed giant spiders, not because it can't win, but because it's afraid of making a scene. This attracted a swarm of eight-eyed giant spiders that attacked him. "You said you killed a lot of tiny, eight-eyed giant spiders, at least 100. Wit glanced at the achievement screen, where the hunting proficiency score was only 13. It seems that those particularly small eight-eyed giant spiders don't count. Next time, you don't need to specifically hunt those young spiders, and be more careful. Based on the number of eight-eyed giant spiders, Wit can still farm at least a few dozen more blue treasure chests. But he still decided to stop once he had completed 3 rounds. The eight-eyed giant spider is no less intelligent than humans. Hunting the eight-eyed giant spider, one after another, will definitely be noticed by the other party. If the snake demon falls into an ambush and is injured or killed, that would be a loss rather than a gain. At this stage, it's safer to focus on completing the Academy Cup tasks. At noon, most students were having lunch in the Great Hall of Hogwarts. Harry was among them, currently struggling with a chicken leg. "Harry Potter." Draco walked over with an arrogant look on his face and said in a tone of disappointment, "It's only been a day, and you've already picked up the Weasleys' shabby air." "My name is Malfoy, Draco Malfoy. These are Gore, Crabbe, and Wit. You can definitely tell that some wizarding families are much better off than others, Potter. You shouldn't be hanging out with some oddballs. Come on, I can help you." Draco extended a friendly hand to Harry. But Harry only saw a chubby figure behind him, which quickly overlapped with Draco's. Recalling what he had seen at Madame Malkin's robe shop, Harry coldly rejected Draco. "I think I can tell who's different." Draco's face flushed red. Harry had humiliated him in front of so many people, making him lose all face. "You ungrateful wretch, Potter. Do you want to end up like your parents?" The voice just fell. In an instant, George, Fred, Percy, and a whole bunch of Gryffindor students stood up, forming a circle around Draco and staring at him menacingly. "Apologize," Fred said coldly. The fierce gazes around him made Draco momentarily flustered, but he remained stubbornly defiant. "I am stating the facts." Faced with Draco's unrepentant attitude, Fred drew his wand, feeling it necessary to teach this guy who had insulted Harry's parents a lesson. Pointing several wands at him, Draco's flushed face suddenly turned pale, and he instinctively began to back away, shielding Goyle and Crabbe in front of him. But to his surprise, Gore and Crabbe retreated even faster than he had. Two useless bastards. Draco cursed inwardly and placed his last hope on Wit. If I were you, I wouldn't have done it. Wit stepped forward and stood in front of Draco, his tone perfectly calm, as if those surrounding him were not a pack of Gryffindor lions, but merely a flock of sheep. Then we'll have to give it a try. George and Fred refused to accept the threat. They raised their wands at the same time, but as they swung them down, they were shocked to find that they could no longer move their bodies. The other Gryffindor students around them were completely oblivious to the problem and were all waiting to see what would happen. Percy was the first to notice something was wrong and tried to draw his wand, but Victor grabbed it tightly with one hand. He couldn't move no matter how hard he tried. Upon seeing this, Draco immediately jumped out excitedly. Those who were preparing to mock Gryffindor mercilessly. He had barely opened his mouth when Wit used magic to physically silence him. Shut up. Do you really think I can take on the entire college by myself? You won't stop until you end up in the school hospital, will you? Page 14. Wog. Wit released Percy's hand and grabbed Draco's shoulder, pulling him back forcefully. Before Percy could speak, he reminded him, you can remove the magic from them with a spell like Spell Stop. Percy grinned and swung his arm, revealing a clear red handprint on his wrist. As a prefect, Percy could not afford to stir up trouble again after things had calmed down. He could only do his best to maintain order, comfort the Gryffindors, and get them all back to their seats. Only then were the spells lifted for George and Fred. The Geminis, now able to move again, exchanged a glance as if asking, "Did you see how he made his move?" "I didn't see it." "How can you be so useless?" "Aren't you the same?" The two sat down dejectedly, silently keeping the incident in mind. Back in Slytherin's seat, Vitra pulled Draco down to sit and began to berate him. "Are you out of your mind? Did you just want me to take on the entire Gryffindor house by myself? I now seriously doubt whether my choice was the right one." Draco's face, which had been somewhat displeased, was suddenly covered in cold sweat. He's not stupid, he's just easily swayed by his emotions. Now that he's realized what he just did, Draco understands the stupid thing he did. The other side was clearly about to make a move, yet he still went up to provoke them. No matter how strong Wit is, he couldn't possibly fight so many people by himself. It's all that Poot's fault. Draco instinctively began to shift the blame. Who is right and who is wrong is not important. What matters is the result. Wit said coldly, "We are Slytherin, we only look at results, and the result is that you did something very stupid. You now have to prove to me that my choice was not wrong." Draco was naturally unwilling to be coerced by Wit, but when he turned around and saw Goyle and Crabbe, he instantly remembered their desertion at the last minute. Compared to those two fools, Wit was indeed more capable and more loyal. Wit was entitled to make demands of him. "What do you want?" Draco asked awkwardly. "I can only offer a maximum of 20 galleons. This is all the pocket money he has for the month. He hopes Victor can leave him some." "Oh yeah." Wit glared at Draco speechlessly. This guy's character was hopeless. "I don't want money," Wit said in a low voice. "I've heard that Dean Snape and Mr. Lucius are old friends, and I would like to join the Potions Research Club founded by Professor Snape." "Apologize? What's there to apologize for? He made such a huge sacrifice. How could it be just to apologize to Snape?" Wit isn't out of his mind. He wanted to use Draco as a stepping stone to enter the inner circle of Slytherin. As long as he demonstrated enough ability, he wouldn't need to apologize. Snape would forgive him. Slytherin, profit above all else. Chapter 16, The Difficult-to-Get College Points. Professor Snape's Club. That's it. Draco quickly took the money back and said confidently, "I'll write to Dad in a bit." "Would your father be willing to write a letter about this?" Wit asked, feigning concern and deliberately provoking Draco. Instead of asking for a reason, try to provoke him. Draco is the kind of person who can't stand that kind of talk. "Dad will definitely agree. He's never refused a request of mine," Draco said proudly. "If all else fails, I can tell my mom." Since Draco had already said all that, Wit naturally knew when to stop. "If this really works out, we'll be best friends from now on. Here, have this pudding." Wit's previously serious expression vanished, and he cheerfully served Draco the pudding in front of him. Caramel pudding. Draco eagerly took it, his expression showing great satisfaction. As expected, Wit was the one who knew how to offer things to the boss, unlike Goyle and Crabbe, who had no sense of propriety and only knew how to eat. While eating his pudding, Draco remembered what had just happened and angrily cursed. That idiot Harry Potter has no idea what he's missing. Recalling Harry's humiliation of him, Draco nervously looked around. He was quite certain that someone was spying on him and mocking him in their heart. They mocked him for being rejected by Harry, for being called an oddball by Harry, and for being inferior to the poor Weasley. Even though he wasn't injured, Draco felt like he'd been slapped, his face burning with pain. Draco grew angrier the more he thought about it, and even the creme brulee in his mouth suddenly tasted bland. Like everyone else, Draco grew up listening to stories of Harry the Savior. To him, Harry was the hero in those stories, so Draco naturally held a certain admiration for Harry. However, today the hero he admired not only rejected him, but also stood with Weasley, whom he despised the most. How can Draco not break through the defenses? Draco simply couldn't bear this sense of devastation. Unless Harry abandons the darkness and embraces the light like Wit, Draco will remember him for the rest of his life. Harry, completely unaware that Draco had his eye on him, was curiously observing Victor. They are both first-year students, and both children from Muggle families. Why was Werther so outstanding? Was that why Dumbledore gave him the book? How did he do that? Harry asked Ron habitually, though as a child of a wizarding family, Ron knew far more than he did. Who? Ron turned his head, and following the direction Harry pointed, saw Victor. "I don't know," Ron muttered. "Maybe you should ask that guy over there. I saw him chatting with Wit yesterday. Maybe he'll know." Harry hesitated for a moment after hearing this. After all, he wasn't very familiar with Seamus, and it was rather presumptuous of him to ask this question. George and Fred, on the other hand, had no such concerns and sat down on either side of Seamus. He hooked his arm around Simo's neck and asked with a smile, "We just heard that you're friends with that Slytherin named Wit. Do you know what kind of magic he just used? Tell us about it. Don't be nervous. We mean no harm. We're just curious." Surrounded by two older students, how could Simo not be nervous? But he still insisted on speaking. "I'm not going to tell you. I bet you just don't know." Fred gave George a wink, and George instantly understood. He let go of George's hand and said with a look of disdain, "You don't even know something this small. I bet he doesn't consider you a friend at all." "Nonsense, of course I know." Zemo had a bad temper and couldn't stand being provoked. "You're lying, you have no idea," Fred continued to press. "I know." Zemo felt a fire burning on his head. "Then tell us." Seeing that the time was right, George decisively changed his mind and quickly sat back down, having already stood up. "Say it then," Seamus blurted out. "That's Wit's innate ability, a gift from his bloodline, a kind of magic he's born with that he can use without a wand." "Just wait," Simo suddenly realized. "If you're lying to me, I won't betray Wit." "You've already betrayed him." Fred chuckled as he released his grip, patted Seamus on the shoulder reassuringly, and whispered, "But we'll keep it a secret for you." "Sima." He betrayed his best friend. "If you feel guilty," George whispered, "then tell your friends to stay away from the Malfoys. They're all bad guys. They're Mystic's henchmen. Your friend may have been deceived." Although it was only a brief encounter, the strength that Wit displayed was quite astonishing. Especially the scene where Percy was pinned down by Wit with one hand. George and Fred almost thought there was something wrong with their eyes. More importantly, Wit is only in first grade. If Simo can bring Vitra back, they will have one less enemy in the future. If that doesn't work, it will at least allow Simo to see Vittoria's true colors sooner, which is a good thing for them either way. In response to George's advice, Seamus retorted in annoyance, "Wit is not someone who is so easily fooled. He is very clever." "You're the liars." "Hope so." Fred did not refute Seamus's words. They had indeed just deceived Seamus, and it was not unjust for them to be called liars. "Well then," George said with a chuckle, "this conman brother bids you farewell." The farce ended in the afternoon. Page 15. Wit finally began his first class at Hogwarts. Spells class. To be honest, Wit found this class a bit boring. It consisted of roll call, self-introductions, Professor Flitwick demonstrating magic, and then telling a few jokes about the wizarding world. Half a class period was gone just like that. The key to wielding a wand is in the wrist. Pay attention to that subtle wrist movement. The wand should be turned back lightly, but the swing should be powerful. Halfway through the lesson, Professor Flitwick began to teach how to swing the wand precisely, ensuring that every student's posture was correct. Then the class was over. That's all. After a whole class, Wit couldn't find any opportunity to earn extra points. Professor Flitwick didn't even let them use magic, and he just stood there dumbly spinning his wrist the whole time. This is completely different from the magical world Wit imagined. "Take a break," Professor Flitwick said, standing on a large stack of books. "Next class, we'll learn the key to accurate mantra recitation." Every professor at Hogwarts has their own teaching philosophy and methods. Flitwick advocates building a solid foundation before learning magic. According to the normal teaching curriculum, Flitwick did not teach his students to use the most basic levitation charm until Halloween, 2 months after the start of the school year. Wit had no intention of questioning Professor Flitwick's teaching methods, but purely theoretical classes were indeed boring and made it difficult to stand out from other students. Simply twisting his wrist and chanting incantations, Wit couldn't think of a way to stand out from the other students. Without a chance to demonstrate his abilities, where would he get his academy points? He can't exactly rely on deliberately causing trouble to showcase his magical powers. Professor Flitwick clearly wouldn't like a student who deliberately caused trouble. Only by following the rules can one gain his favor. This annoyed Wit. Chapter 17. The rivalry between academies has always been like this. Evening class, in Magic Spencer's class. Wit, with a sullen face, forced himself to listen attentively and take notes, occasionally nodding in agreement with Professor Binns's dry and boring lecture. If Wit only found the afternoon spells class a little boring, then the history of magic was a complete disaster. God knows how tired he is right now. Wit wished he could turn his wand into an awl and stab his thigh to to make himself more alert. In Professor Binns' class, apart from him and Hermione, everyone else was either daydreaming or sleeping. No one wanted to listen to such a boring lesson. Let's not talk about Hermione. Why did Wit work so hard? It was mainly because of a remark made by Professor Binns. After the course ends, he will ask a question, and students who answer correctly can earn 1 point for their college. Even though it's only 1 point, Wit still wants to get it. He didn't earn a single credit all day today. This is not a good sign. At present, everyone else in the classroom is mediocre and not worth mentioning. The only one who poses a threat to him is Hermione Granger, the King of Gryffindor. Even Hermione was somewhat dazed. Her eyelids inexplicably drooped, and her head was nodding. Every now and then, she would shake her head violently, taking advantage of the brief moment of clarity to try her best to listen to the lecture and take notes. She looks like she could fall asleep at any moment. But Wit wouldn't be fooled by such an illusion. Even though Hermione is also dozing off, she was like this half an hour ago, and nobody knows how much longer she can hold on. If this continued, Wit assessed his condition. He has a 70% chance of losing. No, he can't lose. Wit was determined to get this point. Serpent Demon, Wit whispered. Sneak over to Hermione and quietly sing her a lullaby. Make sure she's asleep, understand? Don't blame me, Miss Granger. This is how the rivalry between the schools has always been. I just have a reason to win. Understood, Master. The Serpent Demon slowly slithered off Vita's body and stealthily climbed up the corner of the table. The movements were very careful. After confirming that Hermione had not found him, the Serpent Demon began to sing his favorite nursery rhyme. London Bridge is falling down, in a very low voice. The soft, husky voice, tinged with a hint of heaviness, crashed down on Hermione's heart like the iron bridge in a nursery rhyme. No, I can't sleep. I'm in class now and I can't sleep in class. Even though Hermione was unwilling, she couldn't resist the double hypnosis and fell into a deep sleep on the table. Here you go. Wit let out a silent cheer. Hee, this point is mine. The history of magic course ended, and Wit finally received the house credits he had been longing for, while Hermione was woken up by her classmates to remind her that get out of class was over. Get out of class is, slippery, over. Very loudly, get out of class is over. Hermione looked up in disbelief, her neck stiff as an old, broken machine. The few students leaving around her and the empty podium were telling her that class was over and the history of magic course was finished. I actually fell asleep. Hermione sat there in frustration, muttering, on the first day of school, I actually fell asleep in class. I'm doomed. I'm definitely going to be kicked out of Hogwarts. No, I have to go apologize to Professor Binns. Hey, wake up. Wit never expected that sleeping in class would have such a huge impact on Hermione. Seeing her frantic state, Wit felt that if he didn't do something, Hermione would really go to Professor Binns to apologize. Hermione looks exactly like Ivan in Chekhov's story, who was so frightened by a sneeze that he died. Wit could only walk over and remind them. Almost everyone in the class was sleeping just now. If we kick students out because of this, Hogwarts would be empty by now. It's you. Hermione looked up and met Vita's eyes. Are you the person from this morning? It's really awful to keep calling me that person. Wit introduced himself gently. Wit Boots, you can just call me Wit. My name is... Hermione remembered what happened that morning and was about to apologize to Wit, but before she could finish speaking, Wit interrupted her. Hermione Granger, I heard your name at the sorting ceremony. Go back and get some rest. Professor Binns's class is completely hypnotic. It's normal to fall asleep. Don't worry about it." After finishing his sentence, Wit left immediately. Although his expression was extremely calm, he still felt a little guilty. If he hadn't made the snake demon sing a lullaby, Hermione would most likely have been able to hold on. The subsequent events would never have happened. He's not Draco, who does bad things and then likes to mock the original owner in front of her. Ignoring Hermione's voice, Wit quickened his pace and left the classroom without stopping for a moment. "Wit." Hermione muttered Wit's name, absent-mindedly putting away her textbooks, and returned to the classroom alone. Meanwhile, on his way back to the Slytherin common room, Wit happened to run into Dumbledore. The other person even waved at him. "Professor Dumbledore, is there anything I can help you with?" Wit walked over and asked in a low voice. "Mr. Ollivander hopes you can go to Diagon Alley this weekend." "Ah, I've already paid." Not wanting to leave a bad impression on Dumbledore over this, Wit quickly said, "If the price isn't enough, I can make up the difference for Mr. Ollivander." "It's not about the money," Dumbledore said gently. "Mr. Ollivander wants to get you a wand that is more suitable so that you can better channel the power within a wizard. Ollivander told me the whole story, and he wants to apologize to you in person." "Then what about my wand?" Wit shook his head and refused. "The book says that wands made from the heartstrings of dragons will submit to wizards with more powerful magic. This wand has already adapted to my power. If I return this wand, Mr. Ollivander will probably have a hard time finding it a new owner. After arriving at Hogwarts, I discovered that I'm actually quite strong. The one that Victor had just randomly picked was now becoming more and more comfortable in his hand. No matter what he wanted to do, the wand would cooperate with him. With such an obedient wand, Wit felt there was really no need to change it. Wands have a life of their own. I believe that what happened that day was not an accident, but a choice ordained by fate." "A novel idea." Dumbledore smiled and nodded, saying softly, "I will relay your words to Ollivander, which may give him new inspiration." Chapter 18. You all sleep under the bed. Back in his dorm, Wit planned to rest early, but before going to sleep, he suddenly remembered that he still had a box he hadn't opened. Although it's a blue box and unlikely to be shipped, there's no guarantee of delivery anyway, so the sooner you open it, the sooner you can enjoy it. There's no need to hoard it and let it get moldy. Looking around, Wit grabbed the snake earth demon that was coiled around him, rubbed his hands together several times, and borrowed some luck. Page 16. There's no dog head, and presumably the same goes for the snake head. Merlin above, I am willing to exchange Professor Dumbledore's lonely old age for my title of the luckiest man. Out. Wit pointed at the treasure chest. His request wasn't high. All he needed was some magic stone powder. No matter how much Wit prayed and burned incense, he wouldn't have high expectations for a blue box. Besides, Professor Dumbledore is over 100 years old and has long since died alone. Using this as a price is no different from getting something for free. Under Victor's hopeless gaze, the treasure chest slowly opened. The melodious call of the deer echoed in Wit's ears. A magnificent stag leaped nimbly through the illusory jungle, crossing the real mist, its form shrinking until it finally came before Werther. James the stag, juvenile form. They actually shipped it. Vit rubbed his eyes hard, and after confirming that he wasn't seeing things, his smile almost split open. Professor Dumbledore is really useful, 5 stars. Master, I'm hungry. Upon being summoned, James instinctively began to crave food. Wait, don't say anything yet. Wit took an apple from the bedside table and stuffed it into James's mouth. He quickly looked around. If anyone saw him, he would probably have to transform into Lockhart tonight and give the other person a good blast. After carefully checking around and confirming that all three of his roommates were fast asleep and none of them had noticed the commotion, Victor put down his wand. Then he began to worry. The serpent demon is small enough to be hidden on his body. Even a young stag will be too big to fit in the dormitory. What? As Wit pondered how to handle James's situation, the serpent demon swam up to James, arrogantly raised its head, and commanded, "Call me Big Brother." As Wit's top general, Snake Demon believed that he was the rightful leader. Even with the Yak Hage, the Snake Demon only temporarily backed down. After all, the other party was 10 years older than him and temporarily superior in terms of martial arts. We need to wait until he grows up before we can subdue him. James the Stag is different. He's just a newborn baby. Taming him would be a piece of cake. Why should I? James asked dismissively, munching on his apple. How could such a small snake, barely thicker than a rope, be worthy of being his elder brother? The arrogant James was completely unwilling to be subordinate to anyone. Just because of this. The serpent demon coiled up, its tail swaying. Yugadimalevarosa. James's body, which was dozens of times heavier than him, was forcibly lifted into the air, and no matter how much the other's limbs thrashed about, he could not break free from the control of the serpent demon. As a magical creature, the serpent demon's body is a natural wand. Even if complex spells cannot be used temporarily, simple spells like the levitation charm are still easy to cast. Moreover, the serpent demon's levitation spell is unlike those of beginners who can only make feathers float. He can easily control a behemoth like James. Fun, fun. Instead of being afraid, James was incredibly excited as he took off. He shouted at the serpent demon, "Higher! Snake demon, you've come to see me as a younger brother. Go any higher, and I'll make you fall straight to the bottom." The serpent demon coldly revoked the levitation spell, and James' body plummeted downwards. Yugadimalevaiosa. Wit brandished his wand, holding James back at the crucial moment, and yelled angrily, "You two, keep your voices down. If you make another sound, I'll throw you into the black lake outside." Wit didn't really care about the snake demon's practice of assigning leaders. As long as it wasn't intentional bullying, he'd let him be the leader if he wanted. However, what he just did was indeed a bit too much. It seems that, apart from me, the serpent demon's nature remains cruel to everyone else. I need to be careful. The dormitories at Hogwarts are quite tall, and the unseen stretch charm can expand the space several times over, so there is no need to consider the spatial structure during construction. As long as a door can be installed on the outside, the inside can be as big as you want. Newt can expand a box into a zoo, so Hogwarts will only be more outrageous. There's a high chance James will break a bone from that fall. In the dead of night, he had to go to the school hospital to ask Mrs. Pomfrey for help, which was just adding to Victor's troubles. Wit's angry rebuke silenced the serpent demon, but James was somewhat exasperated. He never expected the serpent demon to be so ruthless and angrily questioned, "You bastard." Petrification spell. With a glare, James was frozen in place. After doing all this, the serpent demon cautiously glanced at Wit. "Don't go too far with your companions." Wit went over and patted James the stag on the head, lifting the petrification spell from him, and then handed him another apple. This serpent demon is testing his limits. In that case, Wit might as well tell the other party directly. "I don't care if you want to distinguish between the eldest and second eldest, but remember, we are all partners, and there are some things we can't do." "Yes, master." The serpent demon lowered its head, its previous ferocity gone. James was also intimidated by the serpent demon's complex and diverse methods, and quietly ate his apple, not daring to provoke him any further. After James had finished eating, Wit whispered among himself, "James, you hide under the bed for the night. Tomorrow I'll take you to Professor Dumbledore and see if I can arrange a place for you to stay. Such a big deer can't possibly be hidden." After much deliberation, Wit decided to go directly to Dumbledore. After all, James got what he deserved by trading Dumbledore's lifelong loneliness, so asking him for help is perfectly reasonable. Under the bed, James was somewhat unhappy, especially when he saw that the serpent demon could sleep in the bed while he had to lie under it. "Master, I want to go to bed too." "Hi, Tilda." The serpent demon squinted at James. "You dare to compete with me for a seat? Believe me or not, I'll freeze you in place with a petrification spell and then shove you under the bed." Wit was also reluctant to let James sleep in the bed, since James was a bit too big and the bed would be a little cramped. However, it's not quite appropriate to have James sleep under the bed while Serpent Demon sleeps on the bed. It makes him seem somewhat biased. "How about this?" Wit had a flash of inspiration and chased the Serpent Demon off the bed. "How about I sleep on the bed, and you and the Snake Demon sleep under the bed together?" "Snake Demon." James, suppressing a laugh, nodded. "Yes, Master." "Good." Victor patted the Snake Demon's head lightly, then decisively lay down on the bed and quickly closed his eyes. "You just wait." The Serpent Demon glared at James, finding him increasingly displeasing. James completely ignored this. He wasn't that stupid to go looking for a beating when he knew he couldn't win. Chapter 19. I speak with a snake-like accent. I thought you knew that. Early morning of the second day of school, outside the principal's office. "Dumbledore, do not disturb if I am not here." After waiting for half an hour, Wit received this message. It wasn't a message from Dumbledore, but rather something a passing ghost told him. Dumbledore went out early in the morning and wasn't home at all. Wit had no choice but to bring James to class with him. In a defense against the dark arts class. Victor walked into the classroom leading a fawn, instantly becoming a conspicuous figure. Almost all the students looked at him curiously, and some of the bolder ones even tried to reach out and touch James. James dodged all the boys' hands, and most of the girls' hands were also avoided. Only the pretty little witch was able to touch James. The Potter family has a long-standing tradition of being obsessed with good looks. Although it was a small matter, Wit still noticed something was amiss. James' reaction speed is exceptionally agile. Even when a hand suddenly reached out, none of them could touch him. Many persistent students, after failing twice in a row, still secretly followed behind Wit, hoping to touch James. Page 17. Even Draco was getting restless. Fortunately, Professor Quirrell arrived at the crucial moment, wearing his signature large scarf and speaking haltingly with a flustered expression. From the moment he entered the classroom, the air was filled with the unpleasant smell of garlic. Defense against the dark arts class, is that all? Draco's initial excitement turned into silence and contempt. He turned to look at Wit, who was diligently taking notes, and complained somewhat irritably, "Hogwarts classes are the most boring thing I've ever experienced. Yesterday I spent half the day twisting my wrist, foolishly chanting incantations, while listening to a ghost noisily reading the newspaper on stage. Today, another stuttering, gruff, garlic-faced guy is on stage telling boring, lame jokes. Hopefully, flight lessons won't be this boring too." When it comes to flight lessons, Draco becomes incredibly talkative, boasting about how amazing his skills are. He said he once rode a broomstick through a dangerous canyon, keeping pace with birds, and even managed to escape an attack by a Muggle helicopter. The whole process was incredibly thrilling and exciting. There's no doubt that Draco is bragging. But he wasn't the only one in the class bragging. Almost all the children from wizarding families, even Seamus, who lived in the Muggle world and had never seen a flying broom, were boasting about how amazing their flying skills were. Charms class involves wrist rotations, defense against the dark arts class involves smelling garlic, and herbalism, transfiguration, and potions classes haven't been held yet, but they're probably similar. Only the flight course, just hearing the name is enough to excite people. After Quirrell messed up defense against the dark arts class, flying class became the most anticipated course for all the students. Potter, Draco said smugly to Harry, I bet you've never touched a broom before. You're going to fall flat on your face. Harry remained silent. He was indeed worried about the issue. Making a fool of yourself in front of Draco would be a disaster. Harry's silence made Draco even more smug, and he boasted about himself, trying to outdo Harry. Wit, do you think I'm right? What? Wit looked up absent-mindedly. He hadn't earned a single credit in the defense against the dark arts class. Hogwarts credits were harder to earn than he had imagined. Thinking about it carefully, the College Cup is a competition for the entire grade, and it lasts for a whole year. In the original story, Slytherin's total score by the end of the year was less than 500. When averaged out to each person, that's less than 3 points. Over a year, an average person can only score 3 points. All the data shows that college credits are very hard to get. Only those who perform exceptionally well have a chance to earn extra credits from professors. Based on this level of difficulty, he estimates it would take him a month to accumulate 20 points. With only one blue treasure chest a month, he might as well sneak into the Forbidden Forest and hunt the eight-eyed giant spider. Such a predicament could not help but cause Victor great distress. Flying lessons, Quidditch, oh, sorry, I forgot you're also Muggle-born, and like Harry, you've never seen a flying broomstick. Draco's mouth is even uglier than Poot's. He was saying sorry, but he showed absolutely no remorse, making you want to punch him. I'm more interested in joining Professor Snape's Potions Club than in flying brooms. Instead of refuting Draco's words, Wit urged the club to make a decision. Flight lessons. That was a game between him and Harry. It had nothing to do with you, Draco. A rigid, good student, Draco muttered under his breath before assuring everyone. Dad has received the message and said he'll talk to Professor Snape about it in a while. After a while. Lucius was indeed not as easily fooled as Draco. The other party had most likely seen through his thoughts, which was why he deliberately stalled for time, making him serve as Draco's underling for a while longer. I think it shouldn't take long to write a letter. Perhaps you should tell your father that I am a snake talker. Wit didn't want to wait that long, so he chose to increase his bet. Anyway, he had already told Dumbledore about Parslane, so there was nothing to hide. What Lucius thinks is beyond Wit's consideration. An adopted child, 11 years old, Slytherin House, Parslane. Not to mention Lucius. If Wit hadn't known that his abilities came from the Serpent demon, he probably would have doubted whether he was Voldemort's child. Snake-like voice. Draco felt as if he had heard something incredible. Is this really that surprising? Wit summoned the Serpent demon, then opened his eyes and stared at Draco. Look at my eyes, and then look at my pets. I thought you knew. Draco, black circle, black circle. Okay, it is quite obvious, but this is Parslane, the same ability as that Dark Lord. Before Voldemort, the Gaunt family had already declined and was relegated to the fringes of the wizarding world. This can be seen from the small house they live in. They couldn't even afford the tuition at Hogwarts, so they could only claim that they looked down on the Muggle-filled Hogwarts, when in reality they simply couldn't afford to go. Forget about student loans. Given the Gaunt family's obsessive pride, it would be better to just kill them than to ask them to apply for Hogwarts student loans. Years of inbreeding have left every member of the Gaunt family with an extremely serious bloodline disease, making them undesirable even for marriage alliances with other pure-blood families. After all, no one wants their child to be born with a disability. Due to various congenital defects, the magical abilities in the Gaunt family bloodline have never been able to be fully utilized. You can't expect someone who's born mentally challenged to be particularly good at magic. Other families in the wizarding world, seeing the Gaunt family in such a state of decline, with each member suffering from a bloodline disease and having a volatile and easily angered temperament, became even more unwilling to form marriage alliances with the Gaunt family. This situation continued until Voldemort appeared out of nowhere. As the last and most physically healthy member of the Gaunt family, Voldemort brought the family's reputation to its peak. Just like Dumbledore, if Dumbledore wanted to, believe it or not, even if he were over 100 years old, there would still be a lot of people willing to marry him. The same was true of the Gaunt family after Voldemort. Unfortunately, Voldemort himself sent his last remaining relative to Azkaban. Otherwise, Morphin Gaunt would most likely have found a wife. At the height of the Gaunt family's fame, when no successor could be found in the entire wizarding world, Wit, a suspected successor to the Gaunt family, and possibly even Voldemort's son, would undoubtedly have access to enormous resources. Of course, most people wouldn't think of this aspect, since Wyatta's surname isn't Gaunt. But Lucius is a smart man. He'll definitely think things through a bit more. What Wit wanted were these extra layers of thought. Chapter 20. Let's find a school for the child. Class is starting. If you dare to be late for Professor McGonagall's class, you're in big trouble. If we were to name the lesson Wit looked forward to the most, it would undoubtedly be Transfiguration. Transfiguration is very difficult, extremely difficult. Even with the talent of the Serpent demon, the profound knowledge of Transfiguration still gave Wit a headache. The transformation between objects, the conversion between objects and living organisms, and the transformation between living organisms. GAMP's basic transformation rules. It cannot conjure food, nor can it conjure gold. While the magic in Harry Potter may appear outwardly as wish fulfillment, it operates on a set of logic, a logic that follows the rules of magic. The magical world also has its own set of classification rules, including its understanding of matter and living things. This logic is not materialistic, but rather idealistic. The weight of food in the concept of life, and the weight of gold as currency at the social level. The true weight of life on a global scale. Note, this idealism does not refer to idealism at the level of personal cognition, but rather to an ineffable concept or law at the level of the magical world, which cannot be explained with precise language, so it is referred to as idealism. Similar to Tao. The great Tao has no name and no concept, so I can only forcibly give it a name and call it Tao. I cannot articulate the concepts of laws at the level of magic. I can only resort to idealism to represent them. If we interpret the Tao solely from the literal meaning of its words, we cannot understand the great Tao. Similarly, it is also impossible to force an explanation of the concepts and laws of the magical world using the meaning of the word idealism. It can only be understood intuitively, not explained in words. This explains the significance of transfiguration in the magical world. To put it bluntly, transfiguration is the mathematics and physics of the magical world. That's why Wit was even more looking forward to the transfiguration course. Anyone who has been to school and taken exams knows that math is the subject that can most significantly impact a student's score, and the same applies to transformations. Inside the Transfiguration classroom. Page 18. In her tabby cat form, McGonagall sat upright on the podium, her gaze sternly scrutinizing each student who entered the classroom. Transfiguration is not only difficult, but also extremely dangerous, and she must make the new students fully aware of this, to give those naughty students a taste of their own medicine. Since most students had seen McGonagall on the first day of school, they didn't dare to speak loudly, even if they didn't know the cat on the podium was McGonagall. They behaved unusually well. McGonagall was pleased with the students' attitude until Wit brazenly walked into the classroom with James the deer. Wit! Professor McGonagall couldn't hold back and revealed her true form, saying in an extremely serious tone, "Perhaps I should inform Professor Kettleburn of the Magical Creatures Protection class that one of his students has wandered into the wrong classroom and have him come and take you away. Or I could turn you into a stag, so you wouldn't need to attend classes." Wit, Professor McGonagall, Wit quickly explained. James greatly admires you and is very fond of Transfiguration. He insisted on coming to observe your classes. No matter what I say, he won't listen. After Wit finished speaking, he secretly glanced at James, who nodded rapidly, making yo-yo-yo noises, and even ran over to try and rub against him. McGonagall couldn't stand this. Seeing that this little deer was so intelligent and didn't seem like the kind that would cause trouble in class, he reluctantly agreed. This is the only case. After speaking, McGonagall returned to the podium and began the lesson. Wit quickly found an empty seat, opened his textbook, and began to listen to the lecture. Transfiguration is the most dangerous and complex spell you learn at Hogwarts. Anyone who dares to misbehave in my class will be asked to leave and never be allowed to come back. I warned you in advance. McGonagall first gave the students a stern warning before she began to demonstrate the interesting aspects of Transfiguration. She transformed the lectern on the stage into a pig, stirring up all the students' emotions before beginning to explain the profound logic and principles of Transfiguration. Vate filled 3 pages with notes, and James and Serpent Demon listened attentively. Although the book does contain knowledge about Transfiguration, it certainly cannot fully cover all the detailed techniques and shifts in thought processes. The second similarity between Transfiguration and mathematics is that both require a shift in the level of logical thinking. People who are rigid in their thinking will find learning very tiring, and the results will be poor. Most students find it difficult to build and apply new logical thinking when they first learn something. Take the simplest example, the Pythagorean theorem. Those who have learned it can answer it immediately, but those who haven't learned it or understand the concept need to think for a while. This is just the simplest formula to memorize. If the data is changed and applied to real-world applications, the number of formulas that can be instantly recalled will be even smaller. The same applies to Transfiguration, but it is even more complex. When McGonagall finished explaining the theory and started doing practice problems, most of the students looked bewildered. This is M, this is E. This is the atomic bomb manufacturing laboratory. Okay, go and build the atomic bomb. Did I miss something? I was definitely listening, very attentively. The young wizards who received the matches from McGonagall all looked like muggles. Judging from their expressions, McGonagall knew the outcome, but simply memorizing the theory without doing practice problems wouldn't allow her to learn Transfiguration. So even though she knew the students couldn't do it, McGonagall still made them do it themselves. This bewildered expression continued until it reached Wit. "Professor McGonagall, could I have 2 more matches?" Wit whispered, pointing at the Serpent Demon and James the deer. "They want to try too." McGonagall, black square, black square. She glared at Wit, but considering that Wit and his 2 pets had been well behaved throughout the class and hadn't caused any trouble, McGonagall gave Wit 2 extra matches. "It's just 2 matches, not an unreasonable request." "Thank you." Wit gratefully accepted the 3 matches and place them on his desk. A match turns into a needle. Wit chanted incantations, slowly manipulating the magic within his body, solving the problem step by step. First, there's the shape, a sharp needle tip and a slender needle body. Then comes the material conversion. Finally, carve some simple patterns. Transfiguration complete. Professor McGonagall strode over and stared intently at the fine needle on Wit's desk. 2.5 thin needles. Both the serpent demon and Wit completed the spell, and James the deer completed half of it. James's talent for transfiguration is undeniable, given that he was able to transform into an animagus on his own during his student years, and even help Sirius Black and Peter Pettigrew transform together. Needless to say, the serpent demon and Wit were also involved. But McGonagall found it hard to accept. It's one thing for Wit to be able to do that, but his two pets can actually learn shape-shifting. Keep in mind that the other students in the class were basically struggling with their matches, and the matches in front of them didn't change at all. Apart from Wit, my entire class of students is not even as good as a deer and a snake. Let's find a school for the child. No, they seem to be in school right now. McGonagall felt her brain wasn't quite working properly, and she wore the same bewildered expression as the other students. Chapter 21 only gets 1 point. Professor McGonagall, Professor McGonagall. Minute. Wit whispered a reminder. Oh, McGonagall realized what was happening. Slytherin gets a point, get out of class dismissed. Why only 1 point? You should add more. Wit stared longingly at McGonagall, but McGonagall's mind was no longer on the lesson. She announced the end of get out of class and left immediately. Draco, on the other hand, rushed over as soon as he heard the news. Vit, Draco whispered, could I borrow your 2 pets for a while? A pet that can learn and use magic would definitely make you look impressive when you take it out. Then he can mock Harry for being less than an animal. If you write to your father now, I will lend you the stag, James. Having gone to great lengths to get a point from McGonagall, we could only pin his last hopes on Snape. I want that snake. Draco had just seen it clearly. The small, emerald green snake on Wit's shoulder possessed far greater magical power than the deer. If you're not afraid he'll bite you, I don't mind. As soon as Wit finished speaking, the serpent demon opened its sharp fangs to intimidate Draco. Wit worried that Draco wouldn't be able to control the serpent demon and didn't want to lend it to him. As it happened, the serpent demon also disliked Draco, a guy who was all bark and no bite and had a cowardly nature, and didn't want to go out with him. The two, one human and one snake, worked together with incredible coordination. Faced with the serpent demon's fangs, Draco decisively chose the seemingly more docile James. I think I'll choose James instead. Write a letter. Seeing that Draco was about to leave, Wit decisively reached out and pulled him back. Okay. Draco picked up a pen and paper and wrote another letter to Lucius, and only then did Wit let him go. While Draco was taking James to show off to Harry, McGonagall rushed to Dumbledore's office. Professor Dumbledore. Professor McGonagall, what's the matter that you called me back in such a hurry? Would you like a cup of black tea? Phoenix appeared in the headmaster's office with Dumbledore, who was holding a cup of black tea, clearly having just been chatting with someone. The snake that Wit kept, and a deer. McGonagall tried to make her words as clear as possible. They are able to learn and use transfiguration, and they do it much better than most students. Dumbledore abruptly stopped drinking his tea. Deer, what deer? He knew about the snake that Wit kept, but he wasn't so sure about the deer that Professor McGonagall mentioned. You mean that snake can learn magic? Professor McGonagall, are you sure this is about studying? Indeed, there are many creatures in the magical world that can learn magic, such as fairies, centaurs, and mermaids, all of whom need to learn in order to use magic. They also have their own language, society, and even religious beliefs. But a snake can learn magic and even perform better than a human. Even the well-informed Dumbledore had never seen anything like it. Page 19. I'm sure. McGonagall nodded seriously, confirming that it was just as Dumbledore had thought. Dumbledore put down his teacup and decided to go and see for himself. Inside Hogwarts, James skipped and hopped around, ignoring Draco's calls from behind. Obedient. If James were obedient, there wouldn't be many troublemakers at Hogwarts. He put on an act when Wit was around, but now that Wit is gone, what's the point of his pretense? Unless Draco can demonstrate his power to subdue James, it's simply impossible to get James to obey him. With James's agility and the support of 4 legs, if he wanted to walk, Draco couldn't catch up even if he rode a horse. In the blink of an eye, James disappeared from Draco's sight. Damn it, is that deer crazy? It's running so fast. Draco, panting heavily, leaned against the wall, beginning to regret his decision. He should have chosen the snake. Should we still go find Harry? Goyle asked, panting heavily. You go ahead. I need to find a place to rest. Draco thought Goyle had absolutely no sense of propriety. Was he going to go to Harry like this, so that Harry could see him make a fool of himself and mock him? The deer of Nerva. That deer wanted to run away on its own, Draco said, shifting the blame. I didn't chase it away on purpose. It has nothing to do with me. Draco and his 2 companions helped each other as they headed to the Great Hall for dinner. Meanwhile, James unknowingly ran to the grass in the central courtyard of Hogwarts. A golden shadow suddenly darted in front of him in the sunlight, and James instinctively opened his mouth and bit it. Exactly. The next second, an even larger black shadow crashed into him. They huddled together and rolled a long way away. Cough, cough, cough. The sudden impact caused the golden object in James' mouth to get stuck in his throat. He coughed violently and managed to spit it out. I'm sorry, are you all right? An extremely handsome face appeared in front of James, bending down to pick up the golden snitch that James had spat out. Mom, I think I'm in love. James stared blankly at Cho Chang, his eyes unblinking. The thief. Because of his injury, Qiu Zhang's movements were somewhat slow, giving the thief time to restart. The golden thief flapped its wings, swiftly dodging Qiu Zhang's attack, and took off into the air. It's fast, but James is faster. With a light leap, James jumped up and precisely caught the golden snitch, handing it to Cho Chang like a treasure. The whole process was incredibly easy and enjoyable. Qiu Zhang was stunned. Taking the golden snitch from James's mouth, Cho Chang couldn't help but ask curiously, how did you do that? As a Quidditch enthusiast, Cho Chang has always hoped to become the seeker for the academy. Therefore, she would practice catching the golden snitch whenever she had time, riding a broom. However, the thief flies too fast, and so far, Qiu Zhang's success rate in catching the thief has not been high. And this was all while she was training alone, without any interference. It would be even more difficult in a competition. The fact that this little deer could catch the thief so easily is like a dream. Can I try again? Qiu Zhang carefully released the golden thief, wanting to confirm whether what had just happened was a coincidence. The thief spread its wings, blinked twice, and then accelerated rapidly to take off again. To show off his skills, James pushed himself to the limit this time, only jumping after the golden snitch had accelerated into the air. At the highest point of its leap, it precisely bites the tip of the thief's flapping wing. The golden snitch has been captured again. My God! Qiu Zhang gasped in amazement, covering her mouth. She was now certain that this little deer could indeed easily catch the golden thief. Looking back on my performance, it was absolutely terrible. Could you help me with my training? Since this little deer can really spot the golden thief so easily, perhaps she can learn something from him. It's still more comfortable than training alone, no matter what. Training together. James was instantly overjoyed. This must be a date. This must be a date. Chapter 22, Angel Investor Slughorn. Wait. Outside the great hall of Hogwarts, Wit, who was about to go to dinner, was stopped by Seamus. You really became friends with that Malfoy, and are going to be his lackey. Simo initially didn't quite believe that Wit would do such a thing, but after thinking it over, he was still worried and came over specifically to ask for an answer. Be his lackey, Wit tilted his head, his face full of question marks. I can forgive the others, but how could you believe such an outrageous statement, Simo? I followed him simply because I needed his help. You can't bow your head when you need someone's help. Unlike Draco, who, despite actively seeking out Harry as a friend, would put on an arrogant face and speak as if being friends with him was a favor he was doing for him. With an attitude like his, Harry must be out of his mind to be friends with him. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. When Seamus heard what Wit said, he breathed a sigh of relief. I knew those two liars couldn't be trusted. A scammer. What scammer? Ah, just as Seamus was wondering how to answer, he suddenly saw Professor Dumbledore walking over. Wait. While Wit turned around, Seamus decisively ran away. He didn't want Wit to know about his embarrassing experience of being tricked by the Weasley brothers. Professor Dumbledore, hello. Wit greeted Dumbledore politely, while secretly cursing Seamus for his lack of loyalty. Professor McGonagall said you've got another deer, and that they can learn magic, Dumbledore asked bluntly. Not again, Wit explained. It's a friend I made on the farm. He came looking for me. As for learning magic, they said they could understand it and wanted to try, so I asked Professor McGonagall for 2 more matches. Wit asked jokingly, Hogwarts wouldn't charge extra for 2 matches, would it? Of course not. Dumbledore was amused by Werther's humor and said gently, I'm just a little curious. Magical creatures that can learn magic are very peculiar even in the magic world. Could you show me? Of course. Wit reached into his sleeve and pulled the serpent demon out. Professor Dumbledore wants to test your magic. The serpent demon flicked its tongue and chanted in snake language, demonstrating the magic it had learned in the past few days. Levitation charm, cutting charm, transfiguration, and finally, petrification charm. Most of them were first-year magic spells, but the serpent demon used them quite skillfully, even beautifully. Slytherin, 3 points. Dumbledore won over Wit the moment he opened his mouth. That's great. Oh, I mean thank you. If you're willing to give me 2 more points, I can even have him tap dance for you. Wit tentatively began to bargain. Snake demon. You want me, a snake, to do tap dancing for people? That's going too far. Believe me or not, I'll bite you. Dumbledore didn't take Wit's words seriously. He glanced at the serpent demon with curiosity. His eyes were cold and indifferent, like a snake's. Dumbledore was amused by his own thoughts. If a person were as cold-blooded as a snake, he would definitely pay special attention to them. But a snake is like a snake. Isn't that obvious? If a snake doesn't look like a snake, then what should it look like? Voldemort was human, which is why he was able to amass such a powerful force and unleash a catastrophe that swept through the wizarding world. If Voldemort were a snake, no matter how powerful he was, those pure-blood families wouldn't listen to him. Therefore, it would have been impossible for it to cause such great damage to the magical world. Page 20. A strange, magical creature. Perhaps I should introduce you to someone else. Dumbledore took a postmark from his pocket and handed it to Wit. Regarding the conflict between you and Professor Snape, you could try writing to him for help. I think he would be happy to help you. Wit took the postmark and saw a signature he had never expected. Horace Slughorn, the former head of Slytherin and Snape's potions professor. An angel investor with a vast network of connections. If you are good enough, Slughorn will open his doors to you and provide you with all kinds of help free of charge. This is much more reliable than Lucius, who won't act until he sees the benefit. Could it be that Dumbledore wasn't home this morning because he went to Slughorn for help? Noticing the change in Wit's eyes, Dumbledore asked curiously, "You know him?" Wit nodded and replied, "I've seen this name before. It's in the acknowledgements section of many books. It seems to belong to a prominent figure in the magical world. Professor Dumbledore, will he really help me?" Instead of rejecting Dumbledore's question, Wit answered it from a different angle. His shocked reaction upon seeing the name was that it would be a lie to say he didn't know the person. "Don't worry, he'll definitely like you." Dumbledore smiled and winked at Wit. "Why don't you try writing him a letter?" Slughorn's eye for people is unparalleled in the magical world. With Wit's talent, Dumbledore only needed to make a move, and everything else would fall into place naturally. This way, he can focus more on Harry. Werther only needs to keep an eye on things occasionally to prevent them from going astray. Harry is the child who needs his constant guidance and help. "I understand. Thank you, Professor Dumbledore." Wit carefully put away the postmark bearing Slughorn's address. He truly owed Dumbledore a huge favor this time. In the magical world, many thresholds that can block a person's life may only require a single word or letter from Slughorn. Such a strong network of connections must be carefully maintained. After saying goodbye to Dumbledore, Victor finished his meal and found a cool, shady spot under a tree, where he leaned against the trunk to review his knowledge of potions. Slughorn is a potions professor, and his talent in potions should make him more likely to win the other party's favor. Just as Wit was enjoying this rare afternoon rest, James, dressed in dusty clothes, appeared in front of him. "Where have you been?" Wit pushed James away in disgust. "You're covered in dust. Don't get yourselves on me." "I'm in love." James's opening remarks were like a magnitude 10 earthquake. "Clam." Wit's eyes widened. "What love are you talking about? I haven't even taken Lily out yet." "What Lily?" James asked, puzzled. "Who is Lily?" "Ah, okay." Wit suddenly remembered that the characters he summoned only had basic talent and personality settings, and he didn't dare to write any backstory. After all, Pangju Academy is a pirated game that skirts the edge of copyright. The copyright to Harry Potter is something he can't afford. It's perfectly normal that James doesn't know Lily. "Who are you dating?" Victor picked up his pumpkin juice and asked with great gossip, "Are there any other deer at school?" "It's not a deer, it's a person," James said, his eyes glazed over. "Her name is Cho Chang, and she's a very, very beautiful witch." Puff. Wit spat out all the pumpkin juice he had drunk and asked incredulously, "What did you say? What did you say her name was?" Chapter 23, Potions Class. "Her name is Cho Chang," James asked somewhat nervously. "You know her too." If Wit also likes Cho Chang, then he will have no choice but to give up. "I've heard of it, but I don't know it." Wit's words made James breathe a huge sigh of relief. "I'm just curious why you think Q Zhang likes you." "Excuse my bluntness," Wit said, pouring cold water on the idea without hesitation. "She most likely just sees you as a pet." I don't think anyone can truly fall in love with a deer. Although the wizarding world is not lacking in true warriors, such as Hagrid's father, Wit felt that Cho Chang probably did not have such earth-shattering courage. James suddenly snapped out of his daze, and the entire deer froze on the spot. After a long pause, he stammered, "I can learn Animagus." Animagus can only transform you into human form, not into a real human, Wit added, delivering another blow. The Animagus magic at Piglin's College can only transform James into a humanoid animal, like a cartoon character from Zootopia. It cannot transform him into a real human. Even if James learns Animagus, would Cho Chang like a human-shaped deer? It's better to clarify some things sooner rather than later. James' entire deer turned greyish-white. The serpent demon curled his lip in disdain. In his view, emotions were a complete burden. Only eternal life and immense power were what he sought. Moreover, these two factors complement each other for the serpent demon. Once the basilisk successfully evolves into a basilisk, its lifespan will be greatly extended. For example, the 1,000-year-old basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets at Hogwarts could live for at least 1,000 years after successfully evolving. The specific upper limit is unknown. Voldemort was crying his eyes out in the toilet. "Give up," Wit said, seeing how upset James was. Actually, being just friends isn't so bad. James remained silent, his heart breaking. Wit was helpless about this, and could only hope that time would heal the wounds in his heart. Potions class. This was the first time Wit had faced Snape since the sorting ceremony. As soon as class started, Snape stared intently at him, ignoring even Harry. Wit felt a chill run down his spine from being stared at. Fortunately, Harry was capable enough to win Snape back from his initial scorn after the initial assessment. Snape took out the roster and began calling out names. When Harry Potter was mentioned, Snape's voice suddenly stopped. "Oh yes, Harry Potter, our newest and most famous person." The malice and targeting in their words were almost undisguised. Draco covered his mouth and secretly mocked Harry. Snape clearly noticed, but he ignored it. After roll call, Snape began introducing the potions course. His tone was full of contempt, as if he didn't expect anyone in the class to truly understand potions. He affectionately called everyone a fool. The whole class was silent. "Potter," Snape said suddenly, "what would I get if I added narcissus root powder to wormwood infusion?" Harry was caught off guard by the sudden attack and couldn't even hear the question clearly. So Harry could only honestly reply, "I don't know, sir." Snape curled his lip in disdain. "Tusk, Tusk, it seems fame doesn't mean everything." Then Snape asked about Bezoar and Aconite, and every time Harry said he didn't know, Snape would mock him. Hermione kept raising her hand, trying to get Snape's attention. But Snape didn't even glance at her. Wit sat quietly to the side, not even bothering to raise his hand or lift his head. These three questions were of special significance to Snape. Harry could answer them, and he himself could answer them, but Snape would never give anyone else a chance to speak. It's like a young couple asking each other, "Do you like me?" You, the third party, suddenly run up to me and say, "I like you." They even thought their answer was correct. Is it a question of right or wrong? Just because Snape wanted to hear the answer from Harry doesn't mean he wanted to hear the answer from anyone else. So Hermione raising her hand was a complete waste of time and would only annoy Snape. "Put your stupid hands down," Snape snapped at Hermione, then began explaining the answers to the three questions to Harry. Wit obediently took notes on the side. He had no intention of getting involved in the feud between Snape and Harry. He wasn't Gryffindor, and he wasn't that reckless. Page 21. Potions class continued, and Snape divided the students into pairs and instructed them on how to brew a simple potion to treat scabies. Whether intentionally or not, Wit was grouped with Goyle by Snape. This guy is a disaster. If Wit isn't careful for even a moment, he'll mess things up. She's a complete liability. Several times, he almost caused Victor to be scolded by Snape. Don't assume that Slytherins won't get scolded. If Slytherins make a mistake, Snape will scold them just the same way. It just won't deduct points. There will be no deliberate targeting. The benefits are much better than those of other colleges. Compared to Harry, Snape was really just looking for trouble. Every time the person at the next table made a mistake, Snape would yell at Harry, "Why didn't you help keep an eye on things? Are you proud to see your classmate make a mistake?" Under this high-pressure policy of nitpicking, Neville, who was next to Harry, was caught in the crossfire and became so nervous that he lit a fire and added porcupine quills to the pot. Wit noticed, but he did nothing. They were too far apart for Neville to hear Victor unless he yelled. Given that Snape clearly still remembered what happened before, if Wit were to speak up rashly and disturb the other students, he would most likely get a scolding. Even if Snape successfully prevented Neville from making a mistake, he might not necessarily earn points for him. Snape had been loitering around him for half the day, looking for trouble, but hadn't found an opportunity yet. Wit has no interest in, or will not do things that offer no benefit and involve risks. Silently watching Seamus help Neville leave the classroom, Wit continued refining the potion, removing the crucible from the flame, reaching out to sense the temperature of the potion, adding the porcupine quills at the optimal point, and stirring clockwise 5 times. The potion is ready. Brewing potions involves the conversion of magical energy. Through specific materials and rituals, the magical properties of the liquid in the crucible are altered, thus creating the potion. Muggles cannot brew potions. Only wizards can guide the transformation of magic within the cauldron. Furthermore, actions such as turning clockwise, counterclockwise, or rotating several times, which have little impact on chemical reactions, have a significant impact on potion brewing. Sometimes, turning the potion more than half a circle will greatly reduce its effectiveness. Experienced potion masters can judge when to stop or even modify some of the brewing steps based on the subtle changes in the potion in the pot. However, beginners are still advised to follow the instructions in the book. In addition, there are no specific rules for brewing some high-level potions that can be copied verbatim. The brewer needs to rely on experience to make judgments. Felix Felicis is such a magical potion that it requires constant monitoring and has a very long brewing time, taking up to 6 months. For 6 months, the brewer had to judge when to rest and when to keep a close eye on the potion by observing the reaction in the crucible. Not only was their schedule completely disrupted, but a single mistake would mean starting all over again. Therefore, Felix Felicis is truly priceless in the magical world. Potions masters would never brew this stuff unless they needed it themselves or someone they had a good relationship with asked for it. If they wanted to make money, they could have made money by brewing anything in 6 months, instead of having nothing better to do than brew Felix Felicis. P.S. Felix Felicis simply increases luck. In a magical world where time can be manipulated, the future can be foreseen, and space can be stretched, Felix Felicis is one of the ultimate achievements of potions. If we were to explain the effects of Felix Felicis by functions such as increasing reaction speed, decisiveness, or intuition, then Felix Felicis would be a bit too much. As for the side effects of arrogance, when you're incredibly lucky and succeed at everything you do, anyone would become arrogant. Chapter 20, For Slughorn's Joy. As the potion was successfully brewed, pink smoke rose from the crucible in front of Vittoria, and the blue liquid was pure and clear. Snape walked over, stared at the cauldron in front of Wit for 2 seconds, and then spoke. Perfect potion, Slytherin plus 3 points. Although Snape didn't particularly like Wit, this year was a crucial juncture for Slytherin to achieve their 7th consecutive title, so Snape had no choice but to reluctantly give Wit points. After sealing the potion, Wit's potion making was completed, adding another item to his collection. Looking at the potion in the pot, which could easily hold 3 bottles, Victor sighed regretfully. Just as he thought, no matter how many bottles a pot of potion yielded, it would only count as a small amount. The score-boosting plan failed. Wit calculated the cooking time and realized that if he worked without sleep, he could get a blue treasure chest in a day and a half. Perhaps in the future, Wit could try brewing multiple potions at once to rack up achievements, but Wit isn't at that level yet. After sealing the potion, Wit secretly kept a copy for himself, intending to send it to Slughorn. This is the first potion he has ever truly concocted. He will buy some more materials later, and while grinding for achievements, concoct an even more perfect potion. The 2 bottles of potion create a contrast, so Slughorn won't take the bait. After Wit finished his homework, Snape never looked in his direction again. Even with the simplest potion, only a few students can successfully brew it on the first try. Most students fail, but none of them suffer the same severe consequences as Neville. It was the norm in the classroom to be scolded by Snape after a failure, and then have to start the crafting process again. When get out of class ended, Harry practically fled the classroom. Even Quirrell's strong garlic smell couldn't have made Harry run that fast. Wit packed his things and was about to leave when Snape suddenly called him back. "Wit, you stay and clean the classroom." "Yes, Professor." Wit didn't ask why, since Snape wouldn't tell him anyway. Half an hour later, all the classroom equipment was cleaned and looked brand new. After examining the body, Snape not only failed to praise it, but spoke with disdain. "You want to join my potions club? Do you think you're qualified, with just that boil-treating potion you just concocted?" A trap. Snape is still digging one for him. Wit raised his head and said calmly, "Professor, you and I both know that it was Mr. Lucius who wrote you the letter that allowed me to join the club. I can get Lucius to write you this letter. That's the ticket." Snape paused for a moment, then said coldly, "Saturday afternoon, go down to the Slytherin common room. The password is Dragon Blood." He finished speaking and left without lingering for a moment. Wit figured that even if he did go, he would just be an observer. Snape wouldn't teach him, much less introduce him to anyone else. But that's enough. Once you've crossed the threshold, the rest is up to you. Moreover, Wit should thank Snape for keeping him here to clean the classroom. In an inconspicuous corner of the potions classroom, Victor quietly took out a small bag, weighed it in his hand, and a smile appeared on his lips. If used sparingly, it can yield about 4 bottles of magic potion. While cleaning the classroom, Wit discovered that most students had leftover raw materials for making medicine to treat boils on their desks. He decisively categorized and secretly hid them, thus saving himself another sum of money. Snape probably didn't care about these cheap items, since the Hogwarts Board of Governors would reimburse him anyway. He only checked some important teaching materials and didn't look at anything else. This caused Vitby a lot of worry, and he even had the snake demon keep a close watch on him to prevent him from being discovered. "Let's go," Wit called from the Serpent demon. "Back to concoct potions and try to secure Professor Slughorn's angel investment." Compared to Snape, who didn't enjoy pleasure much, Slughorn was the real master of making money. Snape was capable of making money, but he wasn't very interested in it. After Lily's death, Snape lost interest in living, let alone making money. Slughorn enjoys pleasure, and pleasure requires money. Fortunately, he has the ability, motivation, and connections to make money. Not only is he good at making money, but he also spends it lavishly. They even gave away Felix Felicis as a classroom gift. While Harry Potter may have played a part, it's enough to show how much money they're willing to spend. Even the extra pay that Dumbledore gave him, which he considered not much, was still described by Slughorn as mere fluff. He is good at making money and willing to spend it, and he is not petty. Slughorn can be described as the most perfect investor in Wit's mind, ranking as the #1 priority target, on par with Dumbledore. Slughorn's old house, the home of his late parents. He used to only come here to rest during his holidays, but now it has become his permanent residence. Even after retiring for so many years, Slughorn often misses his time teaching at Hogwarts. He enjoys personally discovering geniuses, helping them grow, and earning their admiration and respect in return. This would give him a genuine sense of satisfaction. But now, many outstanding young people of the new generation in the magic world don't know him at all, and some haven't even heard of his name. This deeply hurt Slughorn. Slughorn had considered returning to Hogwarts, but the matter of Voldemort remained on his mind. Furthermore, Dumbledore's vague discovery of his conversation with Voldemort years ago only fueled Slughorn's fear. He couldn't imagine what his life would be like if this were revealed. Therefore, Slughorn decisively resigned back then, and still doesn't dare to return to Hogwarts. Fortunately, Voldemort had been dead for 10 years, and Dumbledore seemed to have forgotten about it. A few days ago, he even came to visit him and recommended a young wizard with exceptional talent. I also told him the embarrassing story of Snape being kicked by a bull. Poor kid, Slughorn couldn't help but feel sorry for Wit after hearing this. He knew Snape's personality very well, having taught him for 7 years. Other professors might have just apologized, and that would have been it, but Snape. Page 22. Hopefully, the letter he wrote earlier will have some effect. Slughorn ate candied fruit while lying in a rocking chair and drinking mead. Not far from the rocking chair, a magical instrument was automatically playing a song. Life was incredibly comfortable. Boom, boom, boom. Outside the window, an owl was rhythmically tapping on the window, clutching a small package. A letter from Hogwarts. Who could be writing to me at this time? Slughorn stood up, glanced at the mark on the envelope, and casually took out 3 copper nut and put them into the purse on the owl's foot. Upon opening the envelope, one is greeted by a line of extremely neat handwriting, making for a very comfortable reading experience. Respectfully submitted by Professor Slughorn. The very beginning gave Slughorn a taste of his previous teaching experience, successfully bridging the gap between them. After reading the entire letter, Slughorn opened the small box beneath the envelope and looked at the bottle of azure potion on the right, his eyes flashing with delight. Excellent, no, a masterpiece. Even I couldn't make a better potion than this. Dumbledore, said the boy, also has exceptional magical talent. Oh my God, I can't wait to meet him. Slughorn was unaware that this potion was the result of multiple attempts and immense mental effort by Wit and the Serpent Demon. This does not represent his average level. But that's the charm of letter writing. It allows each person to present their best side, leaving behind a flawless image. Chapter 25, Flying Dragon Rides the Face. Thursday noon. As Wit was eating, an owl suddenly flew over and dropped a package in front of him. It was Slughorn's reply. So fast. Wit only sent the letter that morning, and considering the owl's flight time, Slughorn would probably reply in no more than half an hour. He also sent a gift. It's square and looks like a book. Wit first opened the envelope. The handwriting was somewhat sparse and messy, probably because he was too excited when he wrote it and couldn't help but try to speed up. Wit could sense the other person's joy between the lines. There is also pure appreciation. Then think of Lucius. He has to calculate everything before writing a letter of recommendation, and he's unwilling to suffer any loss. Professor Slughorn is definitely better. After reading the letter, Wit opened the package, and to his surprise, it contained not a book, but a notebook. Slughorn's teaching notes. The paper was covered with dense writing, making it extremely difficult to read. But Wit knew he had struck gold. If Snape's sixth-year textbooks could elevate Harry to the status of a potions prodigy, then Professor Slughorn's decades-long teaching notes are truly priceless. How can Wit possibly repay this? Should we send James to the professor? Wit thought with a hint of disdain. That guy only cares about Q Zhang. 1 second he looks heartbroken, and the next second Q Zhang calls out, and he runs over there like a puppy. They had so much fun. Wit tried to speak up several times, but ultimately decided to let him do as he pleased. Anyway, he had already warned him, and if James didn't listen, he couldn't force him. James had chosen his own path. From Wit's perspective, it was actually a good thing to let James practice Quidditch with Cho Chang, as James's talent was mainly in Quidditch and Transfiguration. Transfiguration has the Serpent demon, so James isn't needed. Let him practice Quidditch. All Wit needs to do during a match is switch to James's card, and he'll instantly become a Quidditch master. It just so happens that Serpent Demon doesn't have much talent in Quidditch, so they can complement each other. Besides, James's potion-making talent should be decent, but considering that he has no hands and his personality is a bit too eccentric, Wit decided to abandon the idea of sending him to Slughorn. It would be more appropriate to give pineapple preserves. It's a small gift, but carries a lot of meaning. Sending someone their favorite food shows thoughtfulness, and for older people, thoughtfulness is more important than anything else. Wit, Draco suddenly leaned closer and asked in his habitually arrogant tone, "You've never touched a flying broomstick before, have you? Do you want me to teach you?" In the afternoon, during flight class, Draco's arrogance reached its peak. He's been playing with flying brooms since he was a child. Compared to Harry, who's never even touched a broom before, is there even a need to compare them? With the dragon charging right in his face, Draco had no idea how he could possibly lose. In a sure-win situation, you have to relentlessly taunt them. Draco had just achieved an unprecedented victory over Harry, and feeling triumphant, he instinctively wanted more attention, so he came to Victor to seek validation. Wit's classroom performance was so good, he was practically the perfect student. Even in potions class, he couldn't beat his opponent. The younger brother is better than the older brother in every way. How can this be allowed? Draco must regain some face. Wit completely ignored Draco's concern and retorted, "Unless you can provide me with a flying broom, I know all the rules and regulations better than you do." That one sentence shut down everything Draco was about to say. "You're just as boring as that know-it-all." Draco felt that coming to see Wit was a mistake. The know-it-all won't share Bertie Bott's every flavor beans with you. Wit glanced at the bag of Bertie Bott's every flavor beans in Draco's hand, then reached over and grabbed a handful. After painstakingly brewing the magic potion, the blue treasure chest they received only contained a box of Bertie Bott's every flavor beans. In the game, this thing increases affection, but in reality, it's just a regular Bertie Bott's every flavor bean. There was a whole box, far too much for them to eat, so Wit simply gave it all to Draco. Such a generous act certainly increased his popularity. This can be considered as making the best use of resources. Draco left, unable to find the sense of belonging he craved with Wit, so he went to find his beloved Harry. He continued to boast about his flying skills relentlessly, completely ignoring Harry's ire-ling expression and whether he could handle it. At 3:30 p.m., All the students arrived early at the flat lawn where the flight class was held. There were 2 neat rows of flying brooms arranged there. Messes. Hooch was clearly not a rigid person. Once all the students had arrived, she started the class ahead of schedule. "What are you all waiting for?" she shouted. "Everyone, choose a broom and stand next to them, quick, quick, quick." As if waking from a dream, the students ran around, trying to select the brooms that looked relatively intact. Although there isn't much difference. These brooms were all old and broken, and every single one of them had forked branches at the end.